Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this edition of the Players NIL. My special guest today, coming from somewhere around the world on a tropical island, is Brianna Dubose. Brianna, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And for everyone who's listening, we're talking about the background on my Zoom. I'm not actually in a tropical area, but I wish I was. It's my happy place. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, I love it. It's a great point of conversation. So I did a little bit of homework, and this guest today, ladies and gentlemen, epitomizes what I think the Players NIL is all about, and that is how do you use athletics to better your life. And then we'll talk about how she's using athletics to better the lives of the people around her. But I want to start off by just listing a couple of her accomplishments. She's been sleeping most of her life, but she's a consultant for her own company called Build, BLD. We'll talk about that. She was a D1 athlete, basketball player at American University. Want to hear about that? An author of a book, The ABCs of College Athletics. She's an adjunct professor at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and she's an entrepreneur. So she pretty much fits the profile of what every student athlete probably hopes to achieve in their life. But Brianna, we start every podcast with a really simple two questions, and it involves two words, really. It's one question with two words. The two words are sports and athletics. Sports is your fandom. You know, it's the games you went to, the people you followed, you watched on television, you went to a game. Athletics is your participation. You were interested in sports, you became an athlete. Tell us a little bit earlier life. Usually sports comes before athletics. Why you became interested in sports? Who were the people that influenced you? Who did you follow?
Sure. So one, that's quite an intro. Every time people read it back to me, I'm like, whoa, that's me. That's me that you're talking about. But thank you so much for your kind words and for doing your homework. That makes this conversation even better because we can really get into the nitty gritty of things. But my sports journey was really unique, actually. So my brother actually started playing basketball before me, and he hated it. My dad coached, and he just that father son just bumping heads, and he didn't pick it up. He actually ended up like running track and doing some other things that are more on the creative side. And a little me, being 5 almost 6 years younger than him, I was picking it up and just being like, I love this is going to be my thing. But I played all sports growing up. It was just a sense of community and developing my leadership skills and having some of the best friendships I've ever been able to cultivate. Like most of my friends are former athletes or current athletes still playing. So it's really a tool for success in so many different ways. And what ended up happening was at a young age, I was looking at women playing college basketball, and I was like, I want to do that because I don't want to play for school. And my brother is almost 6 years older than me. So my parents were like paying for him to go to college. And there was always this like back and forth about why did you not take this class and take that class? And why are you moving around and blah, blah, blah. I was like, I want to go to school for free so that I can choose what I want to do. If I want to drop a class, I can do it and nobody will complain because it's not on their dime. So from a young age, I wanted to do that. And then, speeding it up to high school, I decided to specialize in basketball. My second love was soccer, but by the time I got to high school, it was like specialize to get to where you want to go. But what I always tell athletes now is like, that's not always the case because sometimes if you play multiple sports, you get to work different muscles, you get to have different friends, you get to have a whole different view of the sports landscape, not just through one equal lens. So I decided to specialize, and I ended up going to VCU for college and transferred when my coach left and finished out at American University. So that's kind of me in a nutshell, but it originally just started as something that I was picking up that my brother kind of left off essentially. And I loved how fast paced it was and just that I could score a bunch of points, and it was fun because soccer, you're only scoring like, 3 points is like crazy. So that's kind of how it started off.
So you're an adrenaline junkie and you like reward. That's what you're telling us.
Essentially, yes, essentially.
I love it. Who were some of the people or what were some of the lessons you learned in high school and college through your athletic experience that you look back today and say, wow, that was really instrumental in who I am and what I believe today?
Sure. In high school, I learned that I had to advocate for myself. I think youth sports is kind of getting out of hand right now between youth sports coaches and parents, and just the push for more and more and more, and obviously the escalating costs that are associated with youth sports. So by the time I got to my senior year and I committed, it was just like, what do I want to do and how can I get to where I want to go? I need to advocate for myself. So that was kind of the biggest thing. And of course, with preparation when it comes to grades, it's like you can't just leave off that piece. That's crucial. With no grades, there's no eligibility. With no eligibility, you aren't playing, you aren't going anywhere. And so my grades were good. Like I was consistently on honor roll. So between coming into my own and advocating for myself, and then of course managing my grades, that was kind of the big piece for high school. And when I got into college, it turned into I need to understand what makes me feel well, like what makes me holistically feel good. Because there were things that were missing within my experience because I didn't have time to do them. My first coach at VCU, she's like, you are not going to have an internship. There's no time for that. You are here to play basketball. You are here to go to school. We're trying to win in the A10 and get to the NCAAs. Like, there was no real experience around just that future. And so, and this isn't like that long ago, ironically, but so much has changed in the last couple of years alone since I've graduated from undergrad. And it got to the point by my junior and senior year that I really needed to prioritize my own wellness and ultimately my goals moving forward of what I wanted to accomplish, whether it be with my networking or with my career development or things like that. It was kind of taking that initiative and also putting things in place, because on the women's side, we're still not getting paid at the same rate as our male counterparts. That's just not what it is. So I never had the idea that I wanted to play overseas or even like in the WNBA or anything like that. I just wanted to make sure I had certain things in place, even though my career was ending the way that it did.
Yeah, great answer. You know, a couple months ago, I interviewed Chase Griffin, the quarterback at UCLA,
Mm-hmm.
who Coach Kelly at UCLA says is going to be president of the United States someday. And he was a Gatorade Player of the Year in Texas as a quarterback. I don't have to say any more about what people thought about him athletically. And I asked him about, you know, athletics and balance. And he told me that he had worked so hard in athletics that he was comfortable where he was, but he was also comfortable with if it didn't work out because he worked equally as hard in his academic career. And he had developed interest away from sports. And I think it's what you're talking about is having this balance so that, as I like to say, when the ball stops bouncing, who are you, right? What do you stand for? When you look in the mirror, what do you see? What were some of the things during this period of time when you had this kind of awakening that you needed to have this balance? What were some of the things that you focused on, that you thought about, or that you dreamt about during that time while you were still playing basketball and trying to keep the balance?
Sure. So the funny thing about my career is that I had multiple season ending injuries and coaching changes. And you come in with this certain vision at 17 or 18 years old and what you want to accomplish. And sometimes that does not always happen. And so there was a certain level of acknowledgement first of like, okay, we came in with one idea, now we need to pivot to the next because this is not what it's cracked up to be, seems to be, or what you signed on for it to be. And so in my career, when I had that awakening, quote unquote, it was probably like junior year when I was transferring to American. I had a fresh start. So for folks that don't know, when you transfer, your GPA restarts. So I was like so focused on basketball. While yes, my eligibility was fine, and yes, I was technically still on honor roll. My grades were not up to par in my eyes of what I wanted them to be. And so that was kind of the first thing of like, I want to challenge myself academically. And now I'm at an institution that will do just that, whether I like it or not. For those that don't know, AU is really, it's a highly academic school, private institution, so on and so forth. And I wanted to do that to basically set myself up for my future because I felt like I had no network essentially. I wanted to engage with alumni. I wanted to do events. I wanted to have an internship experience. And so I was able to do all of that. And I just started thinking, like, what do I want out of this? And then by my senior year, when I had another season ending injury, I had to ask myself the critical question of, like, do I want to keep putting my body through this? Because it's exhausting. And I laugh. People laugh at me, but I'm like, I'm serious when I say like, yes, I'm young, but like my body is like old. So, we're doing all the warm-ups and things with bands, and I do not just jump into any exercise anymore because of playing sports for 17 years of my life. It obviously kind of put me in different space and a different trajectory than everybody else. So those are just some of the critical things that I looked at and things that I wanted for myself, because I knew if I didn't do it and I didn't take those steps, then nobody else was going to do it for me. And then I would look up and 4 years would go by and I would have nothing to show for it, but a degree that I may or may not have chosen for myself, and some memories with teammates. So
Wow. I'm impressed with the maturity. There's adults that don't think that through like that. I will give you this consolation prize on your athletic career. I can tell you firsthand, the older you get, the better you were. So you can always tell your friends and family how good you were. No one can go back. No one can question it. So that'll give you some confidence about that. You
there you
finish your
go.
career. You finish your career academically excellent. You go to University of Pennsylvania for a master's degree, another incredible world-class institution. You've used athletics to better your life. You've gotten this education. You've got all this foundational information. Obviously, you have a great foundation from your parents, your family, your friends, your support group. Tell us a little bit about what you do today. I want to hear about Build, BLD, which is cleverly the letters BLD, which are your initials, I think I read.
They
So
are.
tell us the genesis of the company, what your mission is, and how you're trying to use athletics to better the lives of the people around you.
Absolutely. So the last couple of years have been crazy, to say the least, for everybody. And for me, it was time to be able to slow down a bit and really acknowledge like where I want to go next. Because originally I had wanted to stay in Philly and actually work for a college athletics department, either whether it be continuing on with Penn, because I was working with Penn Athletics part time and mentoring some of their athletes, while I was doing different fellowships and things, or it was go to Temple or St. Joe's. Like there's so many schools in Philly. But obviously the pandemic, and then I was like, well, sports is the last place I want to be, because they were in debate if they wanted to play, if they didn't want to play. And so I ended up moving back to DC, Maryland. I'm from Maryland. So I ended up moving back to Maryland, and I created a brand called Black and Ballin', which was surrounding anything dealing with where we were at that time with social justice, with Black lives, with all of it, and Black athletes and things like that. That morphed into my book, The ABCs for College Athletes, because I felt like I had more to say. Being a content creator is fun, but it's not always sustainable. It's like, I give you a 15-second clip and, we go about our day. So I created the ABCs for college athletes, and folks started asking me to speak. The book launched in February 2022. By like fall, people started asking me to speak, and the book is circulating. And I had a great friend who is also in the business, and she was like, you need to LLC, because this is getting a little bit, this is getting bigger, which is great. And you need to put some parameters around that to be able to separate yourself from the business, be able to kind of really continue to market yourself and have a separate entity for the work that you're doing. And I was like, cool. So at the time I was at Georgetown, I teach the college athletics administration course to graduate students. I currently am a management consultant, but most of our clients are like government clients in the green infrastructure and sustainability space. So I was like, how can I merge both of these interests, and how can I continue to build capacity? So I was thinking about fancy names, and I was trying to think of something really creative. And I was like, I'm going to work off my own name. And my initials are BLD, and the word is pronounced build, because essentially I help build capacity for high school athletic departments. So that could be, we're going through a session and we're previewing that college athletics experience, and I'm taking different principles from my book and pulling them in to be able to educate high schoolers, high school athletes, their parents, coaches, administrators on this experience, because there's that lack of education, because they just definitely don't have it on that level. And then on the collegiate level, I may do a consulting project if they want to assess like their organization and how the team is running or different things like that, or prioritizing college athletics, wellness, and all of that good stuff. So that's mainly what I do with Build. I help build capacity for a wider social impact so that athletes feel like they are invested in and they have had the education to be able to sustain themselves over a longer period of time. And what I mean by that is just being self sufficient. Do you have the skills to be able to carry yourself well beyond the game? Because 99% of college athletes don't go on to play professional sports. And obviously, it's a huge, even larger number of high school athletes that don't do that. So, are they getting the education? Are they feeling that they can move on in a way and feel like, okay, yeah, I just did that. I had a great time competing, and now I'm about to go compete at the game of life, and I feel like I have the tools for that. So, I'm a really big proponent for wellness, like I said, and I get to be able to assess that across the board and gauge like how are your relationships with yourself? How are your relationships with teammates? Are you balancing things in your career? Are you understanding this transition post college? Like all of those things. So that is what I do. That is what I would do with Build, and it's like a combination of speaking and consulting, and it's been a really cool ride. Like I've really enjoyed it. I was just having this moment the other day. It's like the book came out in February 2022, so roughly a year and a half ago, and things have just completely shifted. It's like my boss keeps asking, "So where are you going to go next in terms of travel or just people that invite me to speak and do things?" So it's an honor. It's really really cool because I get to share my story and also share the pitfalls, the things that I faced and things that I've gathered along the way from working with fellow athletes and folks that are in this space like yourself and other administrators. So it's good. It's really, really good.
Great. That's a great explanation. And I love it because, it goes back to our balance question. What do the
Mm-hmm.
athletes really feel about themselves? We teach 5 principles, really life skills at the Players NIL, using NIL as a platform, but it's really life skills. And one of them is community service and philanthropy. And the people that wrote the script for us, a mother and daughter team, Liz and Ella Easton. Ella was a national champion, NCAA champion swimmer at Stanford. And she talks about balance and trying to create self-worth, self-wealth, mental health away from sports. And we think that NIL has that opportunity to give you a foundation so that when the ball stops bouncing, you still have a direction, you have an interest, you have an infrastructure of people you can reach out to, things you can do. What are some of the resistance? The last question here. What's the resistance you're getting from athletes? Young people think they're invincible. They think they're never not going to play. They think they're never not going to be healthy. They think they're going to be the top of the top. So what is the resistance that you see? And then how do you counteract that with your wisdom and guidance from your experience?
The biggest resistance is usually from institutions themselves. So if we're speaking strictly about college athletes, because that's usually the name of the game right now, it's such big business that they purposely skip over all of the necessary truths, put it that way, and are willfully ignorant to these are young people and their careers coming to a close. In my book, I pretty much talk about it as you're a car, you're an elite car. Let's say you're a Ferrari, and you will get ran up on your mileage. Folks don't care about gas in the tank. The engine could be sputtering out, whatever. And then after 4 years, that car gets discarded in the junkyard and they go get another one, another Ferrari, or they trade you in, right, with a transfer portal and they will go and try to win a championship with or without you. And so there's just a lack of education and a lack of capacity. So what folks don't know is that there's a mass exodus of administrators that are leaving college athletics because of the lack of work-life balance. So it's not just for student athletes, it's also for administrators also, because they're there the same time that you're there working. And that creates a major gap in education because if you have 500, 600 plus student athletes in your administration, but you only have one person that does career development, like what can they really do with your team? And so there's just a lack of accountability folks are being ignorant to the fact that they're just running these young adults into the ground and just, shipping them off. Great, you graduated, next group in. And there needs to be more, back to the word accountability, especially on the coaches side, because it doesn't take that long to be able to run a 10-minute, 30-minute session after practice around education that could provide value for student athletes and their lives outside of sport, and which in turn would help them perform better in their sport. So that is what I would say. That is what is missing, that accountability piece. And we kind of see it happening. Like the NCAA is just kind of running rampant. Like, there's constantly stuff going on. So it's mainly around that in the current model, which we're seeing that's kind of being pulled apart in different pieces right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's been a great conversation. I think what you're doing is awesome. And I think young people need it.
Likewise.
Young female athletes need it. I want to congratulate your family because I believe I'm the parent of 5 children. And I believe that the 2 greatest things you can give your children are confidence and opportunity. Mm-hmm. Clearly, you have confidence. You used your opportunity to build this. I want to congratulate your parents on that.
Thank you. I'll tell them.
Where can we find the ABCs of college athletics? Where can we get the book?
You can get the book on Amazon, but I always direct folks to my website because I enjoy not only when they understand who I am, but also getting to know who they are. So my website is briannadubose.com, BriannaDubose.com. And my book's listed and more about me and the work that I do. So feel free to, give me a shout out if any of this appeals to you, and I'd be happy to chat.
Confidence and opportunity. Brianna DuBose, you're a classic example of that. Congratulations, and thank you for being a guest today.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome, and likewise, loving what you're doing.
Okay.